I stood in the bustling checkout line at Stonebridge Mall in Virginia, the kind of Sunday afternoon crowd that made the air hum with chatter and the faint beep of scanners. At 72, I, Cassandra Tate, had learned to blend into these places, simple gray dress, wide-brimmed hat to shield my eyes from the fluorescent lights, and my old leather handbag clutched lightly in my arthritic hands. It was worn, sure, with a bit of mud from my morning garden walk, but it held my essentials: wallet, keys, and that faded photo I carried everywhere. I wasn't in a rush, no need to push or complain, just waiting my turn like everyone else, watching families load carts with groceries and kids tugging at parents' sleeves. The mall was a live holiday decoration still lingering from Christmas, even though it was early spring. I smiled at a young mother ahead of me, her toddler giggling over a toy. It reminded me of my own son, Langston, back when he was small, before the military shaped him into the man he became. Those memories kept me grounded, especially on days like this, when the world felt a little too fast. Then, a sharp voice cut through the noise from behind. "Hey, lady, step out of the line." I turned slowly, meeting the eyes of a white security guard, Doug Riker, his name tag read. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a scowl that seemed permanent. His uniform was crisp, but his tone dripped with impatience. "You're blocking the public walkway. We've had complaints about you causing a disturbance." I kept my voice calm, steady, the way I'd practiced over decades of similar encounters. "I'm just waiting to pay, sir. I haven't done anything wrong." "Talking back now?" He stepped closer, pointing toward the exit. "Move it, or I'll make you. We don't tolerate disruptions here." Disruptions? I wasn't raising my voice, wasn't even moving quickly, but I saw it in his eyes, the quick judgment, the dismissal of an older black woman like me as trouble. My heart tightened, but I held firm. "I have the right to be here, just like anyone else. If there's an issue, I'll speak to a supervisor." He laughed, a harsh bark that drew stares. "You threatening me? I've dealt with your type before. Think you can call whoever and scare me off?" Without another word, he signaled to his partner. Rough hands grabbed my arms, yanking me from the line. The crowd parted, some whispering, others averting their eyes. My hat slipped slightly, but I didn't resist. Not yet. Pain shot through my shoulders as they dragged me toward the doors, my feet barely touching the floor. Humiliation burned, but I breathed deep. This wasn't new, but today it would end differently. As they hauled me toward the doors, my feet skimming the polished tile floor, I felt the familiar sting of eyes on me, dozens of shoppers pausing mid-stride, their carts forgotten. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "What's going on? Did she steal something?" No, I hadn't. But in that moment to them I was just an old black woman causing trouble. My handbag swung wildly from my elbow, the contents shifting with each jerk. The pain in my arms was sharp, but I bit back any cry. I'd endured worse in my lifetime: segregated buses, backdoor entrances, stairs that stripped you bare. This was just another chapter. They shoved me against the glass wall outside the main entrance, the cold surface pressing into my back. My hat tumbled to the ground, and I bent slowly to retrieve it, ignoring the ache in my knees. Riker loomed over me, his partner standing back with crossed arms. A passerby, a middle-aged white man with a shopping bag, stopped and frowned. "Hey, what's this about? She looks harmless." Riker's face twisted into a smirk. "Resisting orders, causing a scene in line." He turned to me, voice laced with mockery. "If you mouth off one more time, lady, I'll call the cops myself." I straightened up, dusting off my hat, my heart pounding but my expression serene. The humiliation burned like fire under my skin, the way he said lady like it was an insult, the assumption that I didn't belong. But I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I reached into my handbag, fingers steady despite everything. "I'll make a call," I said evenly, "but not to the police." He burst out laughing, a loud, derisive sound that echoed off the mall's facade. His partner chuckled too, shaking his head. "Oh yeah? Go ahead, call whoever you want. Your lawyer? Your bingo buddies? This ought to be good." He crossed his arms, leaning against the wall as if watching a show, confident in his authority. I pulled out my phone, the old flip model Langston had insisted I keep for emergencies. My thumb hovered over the keys. The crowd grew, phones emerging to record. I dialed the short 4-digit code, the direct line to federal emergency protocols, one Langston had programmed years ago. It rang once. "Langston," I said softly when he answered. "It's Mom. I'm in trouble at Stonebridge Mall." That was all. I hung up, slipping the phone back into my bag. Riker was still grinning, oblivious. But I met his gaze, unblinking, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of unease in his eyes. He had no idea what he'd just unleashed. I hung up the phone, the click echoing in my mind like a quiet promise. Riker's laughter faded into an awkward silence as he shifted his weight, his smirk lingering but less certain now. His partner glanced between us, eyebrows furrowed as if sensing the air thicken. The crowd around us grew denser, phones held high, capturing every moment. I could feel their curiosity prickling my skin, but I didn't acknowledge it. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my handbag, my movements deliberate and unhurried, like I'd done this 1,000 times before. And in a way, I had faced down stares, assumptions, the weight of being unseen yet overly scrutinized. Riker cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Well, who'd you call, huh? Your imaginary friend?" He stepped closer, his breath hot and laced with coffee, invading my space. I didn't flinch. At my age, I'd learned that reacting with anger only fed their narrative. No, I stood there, small and unassuming in my gray dress, hat back in place, letting the seconds stretch. My hands clasped loosely in front of me, fingers intertwined, a habit from church, from waiting out storms bigger than this. The mall's doors whooshed open and closed behind us, shoppers flowing in and out, oblivious or whispering. A young black girl, no older than 10, tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed at me. "Mom, why are they being mean to that grandma?" The mother shushed her, pulling her away, but not before I caught the girl's wide eyes, innocent, questioning. It stung, that look, reminding me why I couldn't break now. Not for me, but for her, for all the ones who'd come after. I met Riker's gaze then, steady and unyielding. No tears? No raised voice? Just the quiet depth of a woman who'd raised a general, who'd buried a husband in uniform, who'd marched in protest long before he was born. He blinked first, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. Softly, almost a whisper carried on the breeze, I said, "You've just laid hands on the mother of a general." He snorted, but it was forced, his posture stiffening. "Yeah, right. Keep dreaming, old lady." But his eyes darted to the doors, as if expecting someone to appear, and in that moment, with the sun warming my back and the world watching, I knew the tide had turned. Not with shouts or fights, but with silence and a single piercing look. I stood there against the cold glass wall, the weight of Riker's doubtful snort hanging in the air like a challenge he didn't yet know he'd lost. My words, "You've just laid hands on the mother of a general," seemed to echo faintly in my own ears, but he brushed them off with a forced chuckle, his eyes scanning the growing crowd as if to rally support. His partner shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me with a mix of pity and dismissal. The mall's entrance bustled on, doors sliding open and shut, but the knot of onlookers tightened around us, their murmurs a low hum that made my skin prickle. Riker, regaining his composure, grabbed his walkie-talkie with a flourish. "Control, this is Riker at West Entrance, requesting patrol support. Got an elderly female here causing a disturbance, non-cooperative behavior." His voice crackled over the static, authoritative and clipped, as if labeling me would make it true. I didn't move, my hands still clasped, feeling the familiar ache in my joints from the earlier rough handling. At 72, my body wasn't as resilient as it once was, but my spirit? That had been forged in harder fires. Another guard approached from inside, a burly man in the same uniform eyeing my handbag with a sneer. "Look at that thing beat up, mud-stained, probably homeless, trying to pull a scam." He leaned in closer than necessary, his breath heavy with mint gum, as if inspecting evidence. Riker nodded, emboldened. Yeah, these types always think they've got special rights, wandering in like they own the place. Their words stung, reducing me to a stereotype, but I held my tongue. I'd heard it all before in grocery stores, on buses, even at doctors' offices. The assumptions that came with my skin, my age, my quiet demeanor. A younger guard, barely out of his 20s, hesitated nearby, his face uncertain. Guys, she hasn't been violent or anything. Maybe we should check her ID first? Run a quick verification? His voice was tentative, almost apologetic, as he glanced at me sympathetically. But Riker shot him down with a glare. We don't verify with people like this. You're new, kid, you don't get it yet. They play the victim card to skirt the rules. The young man backed off, mumbling something under his breath, his cheeks flushing. The crowd swelled, phones out, capturing the scene. Why are they ganging up on an old lady? Someone whispered. Heard she got pulled for attitude. She hasn't said a word. Another voice. This looks bad. Should we call someone? I caught snippets, feeling the shift in the air, their doubt feeding into the tension, but I remained still, drawing on the patience I'd honed raising Langston through his deployments, through the losses. Riker paced, his confidence cracking just a hair. He didn't know it yet, but the oil he'd poured on this fire was about to ignite in ways he couldn't imagine. Riker stopped his pacing abruptly, his face hardening as he turned back to me, walkie-talkie still clutched in his hand like a weapon. The crowd's murmurs had grown louder, a backdrop of unease that only seemed to fuel his irritation. He stepped forward, close enough that I could see the veins pulsing in his neck, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. Listen up, if you don't clear out right now, I'll escalate this. Handcuffs the works. And don't think that little phone call of yours is going to save you from what's coming. I felt the familiar pull of exhaustion in my chest, the weight of years spent navigating moments just like this where my presence alone was seen as a threat. But I didn't let it show. Instead, a small smile tugged at my lips, the kind that comes from knowing the storm is about to break, but not on me. It caught him off guard. I saw his eyes narrow, a flash of confusion breaking through his bravado. The young guard shifted uneasily behind him, while the other one smirked, egging him on with a nod. Without a word, I reached into my handbag slowly, my fingers brushing past the wallet and keys until they found the worn edges of that old photograph. I pulled it out carefully, holding it up just enough for him to see. There I was, younger, standing proud amid a row of uniformed soldiers, my arm linked with Langston's, his stars gleaming on his shoulders, his face stern but full of the pride I'd instilled in him. Do you recognize this man? I asked, my voice soft but steady, like a gentle breeze carrying a warning. Riker glanced at it dismissively, barely a second's worth. No, and I don't care. Put that away before I confiscate it too. I lowered the photo, but didn't tuck it back just yet, letting the image linger in the air between us. My smile faded into something more resolute, a quiet resolve born from decades of raising a son through wars and prejudices. Then you should start worrying, I said evenly, meeting his gaze without flinching. Because the woman you just dragged out of that line is the mother of a general commanding special forces. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh, turning to the young guard with exaggerated disbelief. You hear that? Another one thinking she's somebody special. His partner joined in with a chuckle, but it rang hollow. The crowd stirred, a few gasps cutting through. I could feel their eyes on the photo now, pieces clicking into place. But I said nothing more, slipping the picture back into my bag. My heart beat steadily, knowing Langston was already on his way. Riker had dismissed me, just like so many before him. But dismissal has a way of turning into regret when the truth arrives. A few heartbeats after my words hung in the air, Riker's mocking laugh echoed off the mall's glass facade, but it carried an edge now, like a crack in his armor. He turned to the young guard, slapping him on the shoulder with forced camaraderie. See? Told you. They always got some story to spin. The crowd shifted, a few people exchanging glances, but no one intervened. I stood there, photo still in hand, feeling the weight of their skepticism like an old, familiar burden. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the quiet rage I'd learned to swallow long ago. At my age, I'd seen enough to know that words alone rarely changed minds like his. Then, it happened. A sharp, insistent chime rang out from the mall's internal alarm system, the kind that pierced the hum of shoppers and made heads turn. It wasn't the fire alarm or a shoplifter buzzer. This was deeper, more authoritative, like a signal meant only for those in charge. I recognized it vaguely from the times Langston had described secure protocols, but I kept my face neutral, watching as confusion rippled through the guards. The chief of security burst through the doors from the upper level, his face flushed and tie askew, jogging down the escalator with urgent steps. Behind him trailed a man in a crisp black suit, no uniform but a badge clipped to his belt that glinted under the lights, Department of Defense. My heart steadied. This was the beginning of the shift I'd known was coming. The chief skidded to a halt near us, eyes darting from Riker to me. "What the hell is going on here?" he barked, out of breath. Riker straightened, puffing out his chest. "Sir, just handling a disturbance. This lady was—" The suited man interrupted, his voice low and clipped, stepping forward without a glance at Riker. "Are you the one who touched her?" His eyes locked on Riker, who faltered, mouth opening and closing like a fish. "I was just doing my job. You've just laid hands on the mother of Lieutenant General Langston Tate, Commander of Federal Special Operations." The words dropped like stones into still water, sending shockwaves through the group. The young guard's eyes widened, his face paling as he backed up a step. Riker froze, his smirk vanishing, replaced by a dawning horror. The crowd gasped audibly now, phones capturing the moment, whispers turning to outright exclamations. Did he say General? "That's her son?" The entire west entrance fell silent, the bustle of the mall seeming distant. I didn't say a word more. No gloating, no accusations. Slowly, deliberately, I slipped the photo back into my handbag, snapping it shut with a soft click. Let them process it. My silence had always been my strength, and now it was there unraveling. Riker's face drained of color the moment those words left the suited man's lips, mother of Lieutenant General Langston Tate. I watched it happen, that split-second shift from arrogance to panic, his eyes widening like a deer caught in headlights. The crowd's gasps swelled around us, a wave of shock rippling outward. But I remained still, my handbag clutched in my hands, feeling the faint throb in my arms from where he'd grabbed me. At 72, I'd seen men like him unravel before, clinging to their authority like a lifeline, but this time it felt different, personal, yet detached, as if I were observing a storm I'd summoned without lifting a finger. He recovered quickly, or tried to, fumbling with his walkie-talkie, his fingers trembling just enough for me to notice. "Control, this is Riker. We need immediate verification on this. Could be impersonation, someone pulling a fast one." His voice cracked on the last word, the static crackling back like an accusation. The young guard backed away further, his face ashen, while the other one muttered under his breath, "This can't be real." The suited man from defense didn't flinch. He just crossed his arms, his badge catching the light, a silent reminder of the weight behind him. Then the internal phone on the chief's belt rang insistent, piercing. He answered it hastily, his expression crumpling with each passing second. "Yes, sir. Understood. No, we had no idea. How long has she been detained? Camera footage is available." He hung up, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cool Virginia breeze, and turned to Riker with a glare that could cut glass. You've just manhandled the mother of a 3-star general currently serving at the Pentagon, and now the entire military knows about it." Riker's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment, his uniform suddenly looking too tight, too official for the mess he'd made. "I didn't know," he stammered, his voice pitching higher. "She didn't say anything." He gestured wildly at me, as if my silence was the real crime here. I met his eyes calmly, no accusation in mine, just the quiet truth of a woman who'd raised a son through boot camp horrors and midnight deployments. My lack of protest seemed to unnerve him more than any shout could. The chief leaned in, whispering harshly but loud enough for me to hear, That's what worries me most. The quiet ones. They're the ones with real power to make you disappear. Riker swallowed hard, his hand dropping the walkie-talkie to his side. The crowd was fully engaged now, phones recording every twitch, every bead of sweat on his forehead. Whispers turned to open comments. He's done for. Should have listened. I felt a pang not of pity but of weary recognition. Men like him always escalated when cornered, digging deeper holes. But as the tension peaked, I knew my call had set something irreversible in motion. The storm wasn't just brewing, it was here. As the chief's whispered warning hung in the air, the quiet ones. They're the ones with real power to make you disappear. I felt the shift ripple through the crowd like a chill wind cutting through the Virginia afternoon. Riker stood frozen, his walkie-talkie dangling limp in his hand, the color leaching from his face as if he'd seen a ghost. But it wasn't a ghost. It was the dawning reality I'd carried silently all along. The onlookers, who moments ago had been mere spectators to what they thought was a routine mall scuffle, now leaned in closer, their phones capturing every twitch of his discomfort. Whispers evolved into open speculation, voices overlapping in a growing chorus that made my ears ring. "Did he just say 3-star general?" A woman in yoga pants murmured to her friend, her eyes wide as she replayed the video on her screen. Her companion nodded furiously. "Yeah, and something about the Pentagon. Look at her," she called someone, "and now this? That wasn't a bluff." A cluster of teenagers nearby huddled over one phone, zooming in on my face. "Yo, she looks calm as hell. If my grandma got dragged like that, she'd be yelling, 'This lady? Stone cold. Bet her son's about to roll up with the army.'" I caught snippets from all sides, feeling the energy turn their doubt flipping to intrigue, then to a quiet awe. An older white couple paused their shopping, the man adjusting his glasses. "I overheard the suit guy. Her son's a big shot in special ops? No wonder she's not freaking out." His wife clutched her purse tighter. "Poor guards. They picked the wrong grandma today." Even the young guard, who'd been hesitant before, now stared at me with something like respect, his earlier smirk long gone. He muttered to Riker's partner, "Man, if this is real, we're screwed." She warned him about the photo. Inside the mall, through the glass doors, I saw staff pressing against the windows, faces pale as they whispered among themselves. A barista from the nearby coffee stand poked her head out, tray in hand, forgotten. "I served her earlier, quiet lady, tipped well, said something about staying clear of the area soon. 10 minutes later, that alarm goes off." Her coworker nodded. "And now feds are here? This is wild." The tension coiled tighter, the air thick with anticipation. Riker paced erratically, shooting glances at the horizon as if expecting reinforcements or an escape. No one defended him now. Even his partner edged away, avoiding eye contact. The crowd's phones buzzed with notifications, local news alerts already pinging, I imagined. Whispers turned to bold questions. Should we call the media? Is this racial? I stood there, unmoving, letting their growing suspicion build the pressure. My silence wasn't weakness. It was the calm before the revelation. And as the minutes ticked, I knew Langston's arrival would shatter everything. As the whispers in the crowd reached a fever pitch, "This is wild, feds are here?" I felt a subtle shift in the air, like the calm before thunder. The mall's west entrance, once a mundane threshold of sliding doors and promotional banners, now felt charged, every eye darting toward the parking lot horizon. Then he appeared. My son, Langston Tate, striding through the automatic doors in full uniform, his 3 stars gleaming on his shoulders like badges of battles won. No entourage, no sirens, just him, tall and commanding, his face etched with the quiet and intensity I'd seen since he was a boy, enlisting to protect what mattered most. The crowd parted instinctively, phones lowering as awe replaced curiosity. Riker's pacing halted mid-step, his walkie-talkie slipping from his grip to clatter on the tile. The young guard's mouth fell open, while the chief of security straightened like a recruit at inspection. Langston's boots echoed with purposeful rhythm, cutting through the tension as he approached me. He didn't rush. He never did. Instead, he leaned down gently, his voice low and concerned, just for my ears. "Mom, are you all right?" I nodded, feeling the familiar warmth of his presence ease the ache in my arms. At 72, I'd worried him enough over the years' late-night calls from deployments, hospital visits after his father's passing. But today, I was steady. "I'm fine, son," I replied softly, my voice carrying the weight of our shared history. "But some folks here, they need a lesson in treating an elderly citizen with basic decency." Langston straightened, his gaze shifting to Riker, who now looked small despite his bulk. The general's eyes, sharp from years commanding special forces, pinned the guard in place. Riker stammered something incoherent, but Langston didn't wait. His voice, calm yet resonant, filled the space. "Do you realize that if my mother had fallen, if she'd been hurt in any way, your entire operation here would crumble?" Riker's face blanched further, his hands fidgeting at his sides. I didn't, and not because she's my mother," Langston continued, his tone unyielding but measured like a briefing to wayward troops. "But because she's a person deserving of respect like every other citizen walking through these doors. You owe her that, regardless of who she is." The words landed like a decree, silencing the murmurs. The crowd froze, breaths held. Even the distant hum of mall music seemed to fade. Riker's partner edged back, the young guard staring wide-eyed, as if witnessing a legend unfold. The suited defense man nodded subtly, his presence reinforcing the gravity. No one spoke. No one moved. My simple sentence, delivered through my son, had flipped the script not with fury, but with truth. I'd said little all along, but in that moment it was enough to shatter the illusion of power Riker clung to. The entrance fell into a profound hush, the kind that precedes real change, and I stood there, hat straight, handbag secure, knowing the tide had turned irrevocably. Only 20 minutes after Langston's words silenced the crowd, his declaration hanging like a verdict over Riker's head, I heard the low hum of engines approaching from the parking lot. The tension at the west entrance was palpable, the air thick with unspoken regret from the guards and wide-eyed awe from the onlookers. Phones were still out, but now they captured something bigger unfolding. I stood beside my son, my hand lightly on his arm, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, a reminder of the strength he'd drawn from me, and I from him. At 72, I'd waded through worse storms, but this one felt like justice finally catching up. A black SUV with Pentagon plates pulled up curbside, no sirens or fanfare, just purposeful efficiency. The doors opened, and out stepped a team from the Department of Defense Security Command, led by Colonel Kendra Mills, a sharp-eyed woman in crisp fatigues, her presence commanding without a word. No alarms blared, no lights flashed, only the measured thud of boots on pavement as they advanced through the doors, cutting a path straight to us. The guards snapped to attention instinctively, Riker included, though his posture was rigid with fear rather than discipline. Colonel Mills stopped before us, her gaze sweeping the scene like a scanner. She nodded respectfully to Langston first, "General," then to me, her voice firm but measured. "Ma'am, we've been briefed." Turning to the Chief of Security, she continued, "We've received direct orders from the Secretary of Defense regarding an incident involving harassment, unlawful detention, and physical assault on a senior citizen, the mother of a high-ranking officer." She pulled a red sealed envelope from her jacket, holding it up for all to see. "This is the authorization for a full federal investigation into the entire on-duty security team at Stonebridge Mall today." The words landed like hammer strikes, the crowd murmuring anew as flashes from phones intensified. Riker's face glistened with sweat, his uniform suddenly seeming ill-fitting. He stepped forward hesitantly, voice cracking. I didn't know." Mills fixed him with a steely look, not unkind but unyielding. "And does your protocol allow dragging an elderly woman from a checkout line without any violation? Without cause?" No one answered. The young guard looked away, ashamed. His partner fidgeted, avoiding my eyes. All attention turned to me, then standing serene beside Langston, my hat straight, handbag secure. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Their gazes held a mix of apology and realization, as if seeing me anew, not as the disturbance they'd labeled, but as Cassandra Tate, mother, survivor, the quiet force who'd summoned this reckoning. The team spread out efficiently, securing camera footage and statements. Riker wilted further, mumbling excuses, but it was too late. Justice didn't arrive with noise. It came methodically, inexorably, just as I'd known it would when I made that call. As Colonel Mills and her team fanned out, securing the area with quiet efficiency laptops open, statements being taken, I felt the mall's atmosphere transform around me. The west entrance, once a hub of casual shoppers and echoing footsteps, now pulsed with the gravity of official scrutiny. Langston stood beside me, his hand lightly on my shoulder, a silent anchor amid the growing chaos. At 72, I'd never sought the spotlight, but here it was, thrust upon me not by choice, but by necessity. The crowd lingered, their phones still recording, but now with a hushed reverence, as if witnessing history unfold in real time. Over the mall's intercom, a crisp announcement crackled to life, the voice of the management strained but professional. "Attention shoppers, a federal investigation is underway at this facility to ensure the protection of all citizens' rights. Please cooperate with federal personnel and avoid the West Lobby area." The words echoed off the high ceilings, drawing more eyes our way. Whispers turned to audible reactions. "Federal? For real? That lady's no joke." I caught a few nods in my direction, the earlier pity replaced by something like admiration. Within minutes, my phone buzzed in my handbag, alerts from local news apps that Langston had set up for me. I glanced at the screen as he held it steady, headlines popping up one after another. Mother of Lieutenant General Langston Tate harassed at Virginia Mall. Pentagon involved after elderly woman dragged by security. Quiet call leads to federal probe. Discrimination at Stonebridge. The stories spread like wildfire, quoting eyewitnesses and pulling stills from those very phones in the crowd. One article detailed the video footage already going viral, me being pulled from the line, my calm demeanor contrasting Riker's aggression. "She didn't fight back," one quote read. "Just made a call. Now the military's here." A mall employee, the barista from earlier who'd served me tea with a kind smile, approached hesitantly, tray abandoned. She glanced at the guards, then at me, her voice a whisper. "I thought you were just a regular customer. Tipped generously, didn't complain. Now, I see you're someone no one should mess with." Her words hit me softly, a reminder of how often I'd been underestimated, reduced to my age, my skin, my quiet ways. But today, that underestimation had backfired spectacularly. Riker, now flanked by Mills's team, looked defeated, mumbling to the chief, "This is blowing up. I didn't know." The young guard nearby shook his head, regret plain on his face. Langston leaned into me. "Mom, you want to say anything?" I shook my head. No need. My identity wasn't a weapon, it was a shield I'd never asked for, but one that exposed the cracks in their system. As more agents arrived, securing tapes and interviewing witnesses, I stood tall, handbag secure. The truth was out not just about who I was, but about the respect every person deserved, regardless of titles. And in that revelation, the mall felt smaller, the world a bit fairer. As Colonel Mills's words echoed through the growing hush, "A federal investigation is underway." I watched Riker crumble before my eyes, his once imposing frame shrinking under the weight of his own actions. The west entrance felt like a courtroom now, with the crowd as silent jurors, their phones still raised but trembling slightly. Langston stood firm beside me, his uniform a beacon of authority I'd helped shape through years of quiet sacrifices, packing care packages for deployments, praying through silent nights. At 72, I'd never imagined my simple Sunday errand would lead here, but life had taught me that underestimation often sowed its own downfall. Mills gestured sharply to her team, who moved in with practiced precision. One agent approached Riker, holding out a gloved hand. "Badge, radio, and access card. Now." Riker's fingers fumbled as he unclipped his badge, the metal clinking against the tile as it fell into the agent's palm. He looked up, eyes wild, voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know." I swear I didn't. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his uniform darkening under the arms. He glanced at me, pleading, as if I held the key to his redemption. But I offered nothing, no forgiveness, no accusation. My silence, the same one he'd mocked, now amplified his unraveling. Langston didn't engage, his gaze fixed ahead like a general surveying a field. But Mills stepped closer to Riker, her voice cutting through the tension. "You didn't need to know who she was to do your job right. That's your gravest error, treating someone with disrespect based on what you assumed," Riker stammered. "But she looked? I mean..." He trailed off, the words dying as realization hit. The young guard nearby hung his head, muttering apologies to no one, while the other backed away, dissociating from the mess. In the control room visible through the glass, Mills' team was already at work, pulling footage from the cameras. I imagined the clips. Me in line, calm and unassuming, Riker's rough grab, my feet dragging, the crowd's initial indifference turning to shock. "Send it directly to Justice," Mills ordered, her radio crackling. "Full chain assault, bias indicators, unlawful detention." The files zipped off digitally, sealing Riker's fate. He slumped against the wall, hands covering his face, a broken man who'd wielded power like a club only to have it turn on him. From that instant, my name, Cassandra Tate, transcended the moment. It became a symbol, a stark reminder of judgments made on appearances alone. My gray dress, my mud-streaked bag, my black skin in a space where I didn't belong. Whispers in the crowd evolved. She didn't even raise her voice. That's strength. Langston squeezed my shoulder gently. "Mom, it's over." But I knew it wasn't, not fully. This was the spark for change. Proof that one quiet stand could dismantle assumptions built on bias. As agents led Riker away for questioning, I straightened my hat, handbag secure. I'd been seen, finally, not as a disturbance, but as the force that exposed the flaws in their world. 3 days after the chaos at Stonebridge Mall, life there had resumed its rhythm, the hum of shoppers, the chime of registers, the faint scent of pretzels from the food court. No one spoke openly of the incident, but the west entrance bore subtle scars. A new sign plastered on the glass. Monitored Area Federal Personnel Standards Compliance. It was a quiet admission, a reminder etched in bureaucracy. I, Cassandra Tate, decided to return on a crisp Friday morning. No military escort, no black SUVs. Just me, in my familiar gray dress, wide-brimmed hat shading my eyes, and that same mud-streaked handbag slung over my arm. At 72, I didn't need fanfare. I needed tea leaves for my afternoon brew and a skein of yarn for the blanket I was knitting for my granddaughter. The door slid open with a whoosh, and I stepped through, the cool air conditioning brushing my skin. The new guard at the post, a young man with a fresh uniform and nervous eyes, straightened when he saw me. He recognized me instantly. Word must have spread like wildfire through the staff. "Ma'am," he said, dipping his head in a respectful nod, "can I carry your bag inside for you?" I smiled, the kind that comes from deep within, warmed by his courtesy. "No need, young man," I replied softly, patting the handbag. "This old thing has been with me longer than that little mishap. It can handle a few more steps." He nodded, stepping aside without another word, his posture straight as if at attention. I walked on, passing the very spot where they dragged me days before, the tile floor still gleaming underfoot, but now absent of judgment. Heads turned as I moved through the aisles, but not with suspicion. Shoppers paused, offering small nods or whispers of, "Good morning, ma'am." Even the barista from before, the one who'd served me tea amid the whispers, waved from her counter. "On the house today?" she called, sliding over a cup. I accepted with a thank you, feeling the shift in the air, a silent respect that echoed louder than any apology. No one stared askance. No one questioned my place. For the first time in that space, I was just Cassandra, mother, grandmother, woman deserving of dignity without explanation. As I browsed the tea shelves, selecting chamomile and a soft blue yarn, I glanced back at the entrance. The sign loomed, a testament to change forced by one quiet stand. My handbag felt lighter somehow, its contents undisturbed. I paid at the register, the clerk smiling genuinely. Stepping out into the sunlight, I knew I'd reclaimed more than a mall visit. I'd reclaimed the right to exist without proof. A week later, as I sat in my modest living room in Virginia, knitting that blue yarn into a blanket under the soft glow of my lamp, my phone buzzed with a message from Langston. "Mom, turn on the news, Channel 7. I obliged, remote in hand, the screen flickering to life on a congressional hearing, the National Oversight Committee on Public Conduct, they called it. At 72, I'd never followed politics closely, but there I was, woven into the fabric of it all. The room on screen was stark, filled with suited figures at long tables, microphones poised like sentinels. A senior advisor, a gray-haired man with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned into his mic, reading from a thick report. His voice carried through the speakers, steady and authoritative. "We must remember, a citizen doesn't need to prove their power to earn respect. They simply need to be themselves, and the law should handle the rest." He paused, flipping a page, and I felt a chill as he referenced Stonebridge Mall as a textbook case. This incident highlights systemic bias in everyday security protocols. An elderly black woman, harassed without cause, her dignity assaulted, yet her composure exposed the flaws in our systems. The camera panned to charts and slides detailing new training mandates rolling out nationwide. All personnel handbooks will now include a clause. Interactions with seniors must prioritize minimum respect, irrespective of social status. My heart swelled a bit, not with pride, but with quiet validation. I'd been that woman, dragged and dismissed, but my silence had spoken volumes. The advisor continued. "We've incorporated footage from the event as mandatory training material. Watch this elderly citizen stand unmoved, her poise a lesson in resilience. No shouts, no retaliation, just unwavering dignity that forced accountability." I leaned back in my chair, the knitting needles pausing in my lap. Langston texted again. "That's you, Mom, changing policy without saying a word." The hearing droned on, experts nodding in agreement, but I knew the real impact lay beyond the screen, in the guards who'd think twice next time, in the crowds who'd pull out phones sooner. My handbag sat on the table nearby, that photo tucked inside, a reminder of the power and quiet endurance. I'd never sought to be a case study, but if my story prevented another grandmother from enduring what I had, then every ache from that day was worth it. The advisor's words lingered. Change starts when we refuse to overlook the overlooked. And in that, I saw my reflection not as a victim, but as the catalyst. A month after the congressional hearing echoed my story into policy halls, I found myself back at Stonebridge Mall one quiet afternoon, drawn by curiosity rather than necessity. The Virginia sun filtered through the glass entrance, casting long shadows on the tile where I'd once been dragged. At 72, I'd moved on knitting that blanket, tending my garden, sharing quiet calls with Langston about his days at the Pentagon. But whispers of change pulled me here, like an unfinished thread. The West Lobby looked the same, bustling carts, laughing children, the faint ding of elevators. Yet something new caught my eye, a small, framed black and white photo mounted discreetly on the glass wall, right where they'd pinned me. I stepped closer, my handbag swinging lightly, heart tightening at the sight. There I was, captured mid-incident, standing tall amid the chaos, Langston at my side, my expression serene amid the storm. The plaque beneath read, "Cassandra Tate," not because she is the mother of a general, but because she never needed to shout to be heard. I traced the words with my finger, feeling the cool metal. It wasn't glory, it was a quiet testament, a reminder etched for all who passed. Shoppers glanced my way, some recognizing me with nods, others oblivious. The new guard from before approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, that's for you. Management put it up last week. Said it was a lesson in respect." I smiled softly, the kind that comes from deep-rooted peace. "It's not just for me, son. It's for every grandmother who walks through these doors." He nodded, stepping back respectfully. As I turned to leave, Langston's words from that day replayed in my mind, but it was my own that lingered, spoken softly to him amid the fading chaos. I don't need anyone to know who I am, as long as they're not allowed to forget how to treat me. The photo captured that essence, my silence as strength, my dignity as the loudest voice. Stepping into the sunlight, handbag secure, I felt the weight lift. Not revenge, but ripple. Guards trained anew, policies rewritten, one quiet stand echoing far. In that image, I wasn't just Cassandra Tate, mother of a general. I was every overlooked soul, finally seen, heard without a word. And in that, the story ended not with shouts but with enduring peace.